before a single plague fell on Egypt, before the waters turned to blood, before the sky rained fire, before darkness buried the sun for 3 days straight, there was a man standing in the desert, alone, barefoot, talking to a burning bush, a man with no army, no throne, no title, a man who had run away once before and whose own people didn't fully trust him. This is his story, and it is not the story most people think they know. To understand the Exodus, you need to understand what Egypt was. Not a nation, not just an empire. Egypt was a theological statement. In the ancient world, power and divinity were inseparable. Every river, every harvest, every sunrise, these were not natural events. They were acts of gods, and the Egyptians had a god for all of it. Hapi, the god of the Nile. Heqet, the frog goddess of fertility. Ra, the sun god, the supreme deity, the divine force behind existence itself. Even Pharaoh was not merely a king. He was the living incarnation of Horus, a god walking on earth, breathing, ruling. Egypt at the time of the Exodus was the wealthiest, most militarized, most religiously sophisticated civilization alive. The pyramids had already stood for over 1,000 years. The temples were monuments to divine permanence. And at the center of all this power, hundreds of thousands of Hebrew slaves. Building, hauling, dying. They had been there for 400 years, and their God had been watching. This is the story of what happened when he decided to act. The story begins with a genocide. Pharaoh, terrified of the growing Hebrew population, issued an order. Every Hebrew male infant born was to be thrown into the Nile. Think about that. He weaponized the sacred river of Egypt against the very people he feared. Into this horror, a woman named Heqet gave birth to a son. She hid him for 3 months, and when she could hide him no longer, she did something extraordinary. She obeyed the Pharaoh's command, but not the way he intended. She placed the child in a basket and put him in the Nile. She didn't defy the law. She found a gap in it, and it was Pharaoh's own daughter who pulled the baby from the river, who raised him in the palace, who gave him a name, Moses. He grew up in the house of the enemy, educated in Egyptian theology, politics, military strategy. He knew the gods by name. He knew which rituals held power. He walked the palace corridors of the very civilization enslaving his biological family. This was not a coincidence. God was placing his messenger inside the system, before the messenger even knew who he was. But then Moses made a fatal mistake. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, and something in him broke. He looked left, he looked right, and he killed the man. The next day, a Hebrew saw him and threatened to expose him. The secret was already spreading. Moses ran. He fled to the desert of Midian, far from the palace, far from Egypt, far from everything. He married a woman named Zipporah. He became a shepherd. He lived quietly for 40 years. Let that sit for a moment. 40 years of obscurity after 40 years of palace preparation. The man God was going to use to confront the most powerful empire on earth spent 80 years in preparation before he said a single word to Pharaoh. And when the call finally came, Moses didn't want it. He was 80 years old, tending flocks in the desert, when he saw a bush burning without being consumed. He turned aside to look, and from the fire a voice spoke. I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. And then the commission, I am sending you to Pharaoh. Bring my people out of Egypt. Moses had 5 objections. 5. Who am I to go to Pharaoh? What if they don't believe me? I can't speak well, I am slow of tongue. This is not the Moses of stained glass in Hollywood films. This is a man sitting in the dirt, shaking, telling God why he's the wrong choice. God answered every objection. He gave Moses signs. He gave him his brother Aaron as a spokesman. He gave him a staff that would become a serpent. And then God said something that is easy to miss, something that reframes everything that follows. He said, when you go before Pharaoh, I will harden his heart. Not because Pharaoh was incapable of choosing. Not because God wanted cruelty. But because what was about to happen was not merely a negotiation. It was a declaration of war. A war fought not with swords, but with signs. Moses and Aaron arrived in Egypt. Their first meeting with Pharaoh ended exactly as God said it would, with a flat refusal. Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know this God. This line is everything. Pharaoh's response was not political. It was theological. In his world, gods were known by their temples, their priesthood, their statues. This God had none of those things. This God was a stranger. He was about to be introduced. The first plague, the Nile turns to blood. Aaron stretched his staff over the waters of Egypt. Every river, every canal, every pond, every vessel holding water, blood. The Nile, the divine source of all Egyptian life, turned red. The fish died. The water stank. The people dug frantically along the riverbanks trying to find clean water. Now understand who this struck. Hapi, the god of the Nile. The deity responsible for Egypt's annual flood and the fertility it brought. Hapi was one of the most beloved gods in the entire Egyptian pantheon. With one act, the God of Israel had publicly humiliated him. But Pharaoh's magicians replicated the sign, and Pharaoh's heart did not move. The second plague, frogs. Millions of them, covering the land, flooding the houses, filling the beds, the ovens, the kneading bowls. This targeted Heqet, the Egyptian goddess of fertility and childbirth, depicted with the head of a frog, a symbol of life and new beginnings. Now frogs were a nightmare. Again the magicians replicated it, and again Pharaoh refused. The third plague, gnats. Here something shifts. The magicians tried to replicate this plague. They could not. And they said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." Even Egypt's most powerful sorcerers recognized what was happening. This was not Egyptian magic. This was something else. Pharaoh ignored them. The fourth plague, flies. But notice what happens here. The plagues begin to separate between Egyptian and Hebrew territory. The region of Goshen, where the Hebrews lived, received no flies. This was intentional. God was making a distinction. He was drawing a visible line between his people and Egypt. This was no longer just power, it was identification. The fifth and sixth plagues, livestock disease and boils. All the Egyptian livestock died. This targeted Hathor, the cow goddess, one of the most revered deities in Egypt, associated with love, beauty, and the sky. And then painful, festering boils broke out on every Egyptian, including on the magicians themselves. They couldn't even stand before Moses anymore. This struck Sekhmet, the goddess believed to send and cure disease, and Isis, the great healer. The healers could not heal themselves. The seventh plague, hail fire. This is where the plagues become catastrophic in scale. Moses warned Pharaoh, "Any Egyptian who fears what is coming, shelter your servants and animals." Some Egyptians listened, some didn't. The hail that fell was unprecedented. The text says fire ran along the ground, thunder, lightning, ice and flame together. Everything left in the fields, crops, animals, people, was destroyed. This attacked Nut, the goddess of the sky, Seth, the god of storms and chaos. And for the first time Pharaoh said, "I have sinned. The Lord is righteous. I and my people are wicked. Pray for it to stop." Moses prayed. It stopped. And Pharaoh changed his mind again. The eighth plague, locusts. Moses warned Pharaoh again. Even Pharaoh's own advisors were begging him now, "Do you not yet understand that Egypt is ruined?" Pharaoh began to negotiate. He offered to let only the Hebrew men leave. Moses refused. All of them were going. Every man, woman, child, and animal. The locusts came. They covered every surface. They ate whatever the hail had left. There was nothing green remaining in Egypt. This attacked Osiris, god of the underworld, but also, importantly, god of agriculture, fertility, and vegetation. The crops that sustained Egypt, the ones Osiris was credited with blessing, were utterly gone. Pharaoh confessed again. Moses prayed. A strong wind came and drove every locust into the Red Sea, and Pharaoh hardened again. The ninth plague, darkness. 3 days. 3 days in which no Egyptian could see. Not ordinary nighttime. The text says it was a darkness that could be felt. A physical, tangible darkness. Thick, oppressive, but in Goshen, light. Now understand what this meant theologically. Ra was the supreme god of Egypt, the sun god, the divine force behind creation, behind kingship, behind time itself. Every single day, Egypt watched Ra travel across the sky as proof of divine order. Ma'at, the cosmic balance on which civilization depended. For 3 days, Ra simply disappeared. In Egypt's theological framework, this was the closest thing to the end of the world. And Pharaoh felt it. He called Moses in and said, "Go, take everyone, but leave your livestock." Moses refused. All the animals were coming too. Something in Pharaoh finally broke, but not in repentance. In rage. "Get away from me. Never come before me again. The day you see my face, you will die." Moses answered with 5 words. "You have spoken correctly. I will not return." Because there was one plague left. And this one had no theological target. This one targeted the divine itself. Before the final plague fell, God gave Moses instructions that would define Israel as a people for the next 3,000 years. Every Hebrew household was to take a lamb, without blemish, slaughter it at twilight, and paint its blood on the doorposts and the lintel of the house. They were to roast the lamb and eat it that same night, fully dressed, sandals on feet, staff in hand, ready to leave at a moment's notice. And they were to tell their children about this night, every year, forever. This was not merely a survival ritual. It was a covenant moment. A defining moment. The blood on the door was not magic. It was a declaration of allegiance. Every family that put blood on their doorpost was saying, "We belong to this God. We are under His protection. We are His." The Passover was not the result of the deliverance. It was the deliverance. Then came midnight. The 10th plague, the death of the firstborn. From the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on the throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon, to the firstborn of every animal. Every home without blood on the door. The text says there was not a single house in Egypt without someone dead. And the crying in Egypt that night, the text says, was unlike anything that had ever been heard before, or ever would be heard again. Now hear what this meant theologically. The firstborn son was the inheritor of title, estate, and legacy. In Egypt, the Pharaoh's firstborn was the heir to the living God, the son who would become Horus when his father became Osiris. More than that, Pharaoh himself was considered a god. The incarnation of Horus, protector of Egypt. He could not protect his own son. Every plague had struck an Egyptian deity. But this final act of judgment struck the deity at the top of the pyramid, the god king himself. Egypt's divine order was finished. At midnight, at the same hour that death passed through Egypt, Pharaoh sent for Moses. And for the first time he did not negotiate. He did not offer conditions. He said, "Get up, get out, go serve your God as you said. Take your flocks, your herds, and bless me also." A God begging for a blessing from a slave shepherd. The Hebrews left that night. The text says 600,000 men plus women and children. Some scholars estimate the total number between 2 and 3 million people. They walked out carrying their unleavened bread. There was not even time to let it rise. They walked out with silver, gold, and clothing that the Egyptians gave them. Egypt paid for 400 years of slavery in a single night. They were not out of danger yet. God led them by a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire at night. Not a metaphor. Not poetry. A visible, physical presence moving through the wilderness, and the people followed it. But then came word that changed everything. Pharaoh had changed his mind. Again. He assembled his war machine, 600 of his best chariots, with commanders over all of them. The greatest military force in the world, thundering across the desert. And the Hebrews, camped by the sea with nowhere to go, looked up and saw them coming. The panic was immediate. Were there no graves in Egypt? Why did you bring us here to die? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. This is one of the most human moments in the entire narrative. These were people who had just witnessed 10 catastrophic miracles. They had walked out of the most powerful empire on earth. And at the first sign of danger, the first moment the miracle seemed unreachable, they were ready to go back. Fear has a very short memory. Moses turned to face them. And what he said in that moment is one of the most extraordinary statements in human history. Do not be afraid. Stand firm. Watch the salvation of the Lord that he will accomplish for you today. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Then Moses raised his staff over the sea, and an east wind began to blow. All night it blew, and the sea split. The walls of water stood to the right and to the left. The ground between them was dry. The text says dry ground, not mud, not wet sand, dry ground. 2 million people walked through the middle of the sea. The Egyptian army followed, chariots in the seabed, horses at full gallop, 600 commanders urging their drivers forward. And then God confused them. Their chariot wheels began to fall off. The drivers looked at each other and said, "Let us flee from Israel. The Lord fights for them against Egypt." But it was too late. Moses stretched out his hand, and the water returned. Every chariot, every horse, every soldier, the most powerful military force in the world, consumed by the sea in a moment. When the Israelites saw the Egyptian army dead on the shore that morning, the text says something that is quietly devastating. Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. And Israel saw the great power that the Lord had used against Egypt. And the people feared the Lord and believed in him and in his servant Moses. Not before, after. Faith so often is the thing that comes last. Here is what you just witnessed. Not a series of natural disasters explained away by science. Not a political negotiation between a king and a religious leader. Not a myth borrowed from other ancient cultures. This was a declaration. Each plague was surgical. Each one struck a specific deity at a specific layer of Egyptian power. From the Nile to the livestock to the sun, the God of Israel moved methodically through the entire theological structure of Egypt and dismantled it, piece by piece, God by God. And he did it through a man who didn't want to go, a man who stuttered, who had blood on his hands from 40 years before, who argued with God at a burning bush, who stood barefoot in the desert and said, "Send someone else." The story of Moses is not a story of a great man chosen because of his greatness. It is a story of a broken man, chosen in spite of his brokenness. But here is what I want you to see before this video ends. Because the Exodus doesn't end at the Red Sea. The Exodus points forward. Remember the lamb without blemish, slaughtered at twilight, its blood painted on the doorposts, not because of the family's goodness, not because they had earned protection, but because the blood was there, and death passed over. That image, that specific image, echoes through the entire Bible. For 1500 years, the Hebrew people repeated it every Passover. Blood on the door. A lamb given in place of the firstborn. A people saved not by their own merit, but by a substitute. And then, in the fullness of time, a man appeared on the banks of the Jordan River. And a voice identified him with 5 words. Behold, the Lamb of God. The same Passover imagery. The same theological structure. But no longer a lamb slaughtered in a household. This time, a life given on a cross. Blood not on a doorpost, but shed for every person who has ever lived under the weight of something they cannot escape on their own. The Exodus was not just history. It was a preview. God was showing, centuries in advance, exactly what he was going to do. He was going to enter history again. He was going to confront the deepest bondage human beings face. Not slavery to an empire, but slavery to sin, to shame, to death itself. And he was going to break it, not with plagues, but with a cross and an empty tomb. Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him?" That is still the question every person on earth has to answer. Not as a religious formality, not as a cultural tradition, as the most important question of your life. Because the same God who split the Red Sea, who dismantled the gods of Egypt, who heard the cry of a forgotten people after 400 years of silence, he hears you. And if you have never personally placed your trust in the Lamb, if you have never come to Jesus as the one who took your place, bore what you deserved, and opened a way through death that no human power could close, today is the day to do that. Not because you are good enough. Moses wasn't. Not because you have it all figured out. The Israelites didn't. They panicked at the edge of the sea before the miracle even happened. But because the God of Exodus is still the same God, still acting, still saving, still calling broken people by name and sending them through walls of water they never could have parted themselves. The question is not whether he is able. The question is whether you will trust him. If this story stirred something in you, if the God of Moses feels closer than he did an hour ago, don't let that pass. Follow that. Search for it. Pray into it. And if you want to keep going deeper into this story, what happened in the wilderness, what the law revealed, and where it all leads, subscribe and come back. The story is far from over.